So this is a bit of an odd one for me here today. You might have noticed if you've been keeping up with my channel that last week was supposed to be my review of Shenmue for the Dreamcast, and I went over to my mom's place and filmed a little bit with my brother Eric because he also experienced it for the first time actually this summer, and I was going to have him as part of the review, and that episode is mostly finished and was ready to go last week, and you might have noticed that it didn't show up, and neither did the other episode for last week, and I've been kind of silent on mostly YouTube and haven't really been on Twitter and haven't done a whole lot on Facebook in the past week or so, and I didn't quite disappear. I'm still here, and Summer of Sega will continue. In fact, there's a lot I want to do, so I'm going to tell you about the new plan here and what happened. See, last Wednesday I found out that my dad passed away, and I just really, those next couple of days wasn't really in the mood to be productive at all. I did go to work that following weekend and was fine through that, but there's just a couple days there where I just couldn't bring myself to do something like that, and particularly something where, I don't know, it just didn't feel right doing something like that Shenmue review, something that is so happy, something that is so reflective on something that had absolutely nothing to do with my dad, having, him not really be a part of that experience, where I just couldn't really bring myself to do it. And not to bring you guys down and talk about, death and regrets and all of that. Not really my intention here. I just kind of wanted to come on and let everyone know what was happening and why there were no videos last week, and why there will also be no Summer of Sega this week as well. I apologize for that. It's been rather complicated the past few days, and today's video. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I dealt with it. It's a complicated issue, talking about my dad passing and a lot of different emotions involved, and I thought it would be an interesting way of letting you guys know a little bit about that, simply because I kind of used a lot of memories of gaming where my dad was involved to really work through it. I spent, after I found out, that night, didn't really do a whole lot. The next day, I pretty much spent the entire day just going through and playing games that I associate from my childhood with my dad, as a way of, it's not really something I really like to talk about, and it's not something where you want to sit in a dark room and reflect, staring at a wall, not really that type of thing, sitting there listening to Enya during the rain and crying. It's not really the way I handle things. I always need to be very tactile and interactive with something, and especially even dealing with an issue like this, I just need that experience. I need to be actively doing something in order to process my thoughts and work through something. And I felt the best way to do that was to do something that was interactive, that I associated with my dad, and in that way really reflect on the good rather than the bad, and really focus on just what I wanted to do and what this actually meant to me, and working through those feelings. So today I just wanted to show you a little bit of gameplay and talk to you a little bit about why these games have an association with my dad for me, and why they were important for me to play a little bit of during those couple of days after his passing. The first was Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt for the NES, and that's because the NES was in fact the first console I owned. Before the NES, I was really big into my Macintosh computer, my Power Mac, and then my first Windows CD and PC, and I actually got the NES in the early 90s, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, like 93, 94, so kind of well after its prime and into the Super Nintendo's era, and even then I really enjoyed it. And the reason why Mario Brothers stuck out was because that was the first game I played on the system, the first console game I ever owned, and I just have a memory of my dad, who neither of my parents are very good with technology. Pretty much the printing press is as far as they got. So having him learn to hook up the original Nintendo, me not having much experience with that, was an interesting feat in itself. And we originally also had just like an RF adapter, and like that whole thing was just ridiculous. And I remember him being on the phone with a family friend, Michael Caine, and trying to figure this thing out because his son Brian had an NES, and that's the first time I ever experienced one, was over at their place. And that was just, for me, that's the first real console gaming experience I had with my dad, because a lot of the Mac gaming I did really when I was really young, he was kind of hands off. He didn't really get into it at all. Like, he set up the computer in the basement in our old house, and I got a few games, and aside from helping me install them, he wasn't really involved at all, didn't really watch me play them. So that was the first time that I remember him being involved in some manner with gaming in my life. And the next one I want to look at was the first Bushido Blade, my favorite fighting game of all time, one of my first PS1 games. And this I have a little bit of memory with my dad playing, because he was intrigued by the idea of Bushido Blade, where it was a more realistic one-hit kill system, where if you hit the enemy correctly in a vital point, it would realistically damage them. You could take out their legs, you could injure an arm, you could hit them in the throat or in the head or right in like the gut, they would die instantly, and it was handled in a different way. And he sat down a couple of times and watched me play it, and never really got in on it himself. He decided, right off the bat, that it is too complicated for him, but he enjoyed the premise, and to me it stands out not because he played it, because I said he didn't, but because it was the first time he actually talked to me about gaming in a way, the first time he showed any interest, the first time that he was like, explain this to me, I'm intrigued. And it was being, again, said from a family where my parents were really had no idea when something like technology-wise was out, just no concept and no experience, and didn't even really try. It stood out to me because that was my first memory of an effort being put forth to understand something I was experiencing. And the next one would be Tekken 3, more because it's similar to Bushido Blade. They're both fighting games, and it was a similar experience where he actually a couple times tried to play it, and I'm not even sure why. It was a very random thing. It was it was in the very beginning of high school, I think. I was sitting there on a random Saturday playing it, and I'm not sure why. I forget, for some reason we were the only two people in the house, and I was sitting in the living room playing it, and he decided to sit down and asked if he could try a few rounds. And it was just instant victories for me, but it was still an experience that I remember simply because, again, it was something of an effort to understand something that he wouldn't necessarily go out of his way if he didn't have a son who was involved in that sort of thing. The next two here have very similar memories, because they're before Blockbuster came into my hometown, we had a couple of independent movie rental places, and the best one by far was on the opposite side of town from me, called D&J Video. And I loved going there as a kid, and I have a lot of memories of some specific games or movies that for some reason I never owned for the longest time, but I rented constantly. And the first one was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and I associate that more with my dad because I have more memories of going there with my dad than my mom. It's one of those weird things where there are just certain things, like going camping every summer or so, certain things that were sort of dad things growing up. And, while I went to the video store with both parents, it was an odd thing where, my dad would occasionally let me rent a PG-13 movie or an R-rated movie, and then I was, not supposed to tell mom, that kind of thing. Or he would let me get games more often. Pro Skater 2, I just remember renting a whole bunch of times before I bought it. And the big one, though, with that was Final Fantasy VIII. I had just played Final Fantasy VII, and Final Fantasy VIII was already on the shelves, and I didn't have enough money to get it. And I ended up renting it so many times from D&J Video that I easily could have afforded it, probably twice over by the time I actually bought a used copy down the road. But I didn't want to stop playing, and I never had quite enough time to finish it within one rental, because playing video games was limited occasionally and just didn't have enough time. And that one really stood out to me in those memories because it was something where my dad was really fascinated by it after watching the intro sequence, which you're seeing right now. And if you've seen this and you've heard the music and if you've experienced it, it's one of the best intro sequences ever. Especially on the PS1, it's easily in my top 5 intro sequences, and it's one that really, really gets you into the game. And he was interested enough to where I actually moved the PS1 from the living room into his office, where he had one of those really big, bubble butt TVs, the big cathode ray tube TVs in his office, and it was an old one from our basement in our old house, and I actually played the majority of my time renting it in his office instead of the living room, just kind of sitting on the floor, because he was actually interested in seeing it and got a little bit interested into the story and was intrigued by it. And again, it was one of those things where if any interest was shown in that type of thing, I latched onto that memory, onto that experience, and just playing through that day, the first couple hours of Final Fantasy VIII, I haven't played it in years, and it really just brought me back to a different time, to a different world, and brought me back to more positive memories. And that was my main focus, on not focusing on any sort of negative associations I have with memories of my father, but focusing only on the positive associations, and really doing that through a game like Final Fantasy VIII was a way of actually physically touching something that reminded me of that time, sort of something where the game in a way was almost a physical manifestation of that memory, where you can pull something like that off the shelf, and it's almost like when you open the case, it's opening that memory concealed within a box and putting it through and experiencing those sounds and those feelings. And it's like transporting you in a way, more than simply talking about something or remembering something. It's almost a way of, odd way of re-experiencing something. And I really enjoyed that in particular. The next thing was Xena, Warrior Princess for the PS1, and this is actually a marvelous game. If you've never played it, as far as licensed games go, this is easily my favorite of all time, because it's so good as an action-adventure game that I would recommend it to people who have never heard of Xena. And the reason why this one stands out to me is because as a young kid, I loved Hercules and Xena. Really loved watching those shows. And I remember my dad watching me play this game a little bit, and us having a little bit of an argument about which was the better show, Hercules or Xena. And as a kid, I was really into Hercules, and I had maybe in second or third grade, I think I had a Halloween costume where I dressed up as Hercules, and I really wanted to be Kevin Sorbo. And thankfully, as an adult, I've gotten over that and realized that the actual Kevin Sorbo is an ignorant, deluded jerk, but the character was wonderful, and Xena is definitely the better show overall. But as a kid, I just had this obsession with Hercules and really, really loved that. And I remember that little bit of an argument where, to me, I was actually angry and was arguing, and to him, he was just sort of having fun, and it was almost like mockingly, and like he thought it was funny that I was getting angry about it. And I just have a little bit of memory with that. And the next would be Crash Team Racing. And I have a lot of memories of this game with most of my family, actually. There was a little bit of a Christmas tradition where when we would get up really early Christmas Day, there'd be an hour or two before my parents would wake up. And for a while, my little sister and I would break out the NES and play either the original Super Mario Brothers or Mario Brothers 3. And as we got a little bit older and my brother was able to start playing video games, slowly that sort of morphed into playing Crash Team Racing every Christmas morning instead of Mario. And we just did that all the time, and countless hours into CTR. And this was one of the few games, again, that my dad actually tried to play a couple times. One Christmas morning he played like a couple races with us, and there was some random summer afternoon where he played a couple races, and it's something where I just have a lot of memories with this game in general involving my family, and he was a part of a couple of those. So this is a game I break out often when I'm thinking about sort of old family memories. And the last and most important for me by far is Xenogears for the PS1. It's my second favorite game of all time, and honestly, for more than 14 years, it was my favorite game of all time, just recently replaced by Xenoblade Chronicles, which I just have like an obsession with now. But this game is incredibly important to me for many, many reasons, not involving my father at all. So it already is an important game in itself for many parts of my life. And then it involves him because that's where it started. He was the one who originally bought me the game. We used to go camping all the time with my dad for many years, and one summer there was a really, really bad storm. It was supposed to last most of the day, and so we kind of packed up some stuff and went to a local mall to wait out the storm, and we were there for a few hours. And walking around the stores. We ended up going to a couple video game stores, and at the time, I was obsessed with the original PlayStation. Like, there was, when I first got my PS1, I just went nuts, and I particularly was into Squaresoft games, to the point where if it said Squaresoft on the box, I bought it. It didn't matter what it was, and occasionally there were subpar experiences, but on the whole, that to me is my favorite time in my life for gaming. More than even some of my favorite systems that came after that, like the PS2 and the Dreamcast, more than things before that with my old memories with my old Mac and everything. For some reason, that era in the late 90s with the PS1 will always be for me the most nostalgic, even though it's not my first experience with gaming. There's something about that era that, to me, I have the most memories associated with it. And this game in particular, I saw it and I wanted it, and it was not that long after it was released, and it was still, I got it new, and it was around like the $40-ish price range. And he ended up, we were actually in the store, and it was funny because this one employee was talking to another customer about it, and the employee said something about, oh, you don't want that, it's like anti-religion or something, and there was a bit of just a little bit of controversy when Xenogears came out, and only in North America as far as I know, because it was just ridiculous, where like anything, even if it has even a hint of being anti-Christian in any way, there's an uproar. And it was just, my dad for some reason found it humorous, and the fact that I really wanted it, and I think that influenced his decision to like let me get it, just because he thought it was funny to see the look on the employee's face, and I don't know, it was an odd thing, but I really wanted it, and I ended up getting it, and he's like, it was a little over $40, and he's like, oh, don't tell your mother you got this, and blah, blah, just one of those odd experiences. And I remember looking at the case, because we were still camping for a couple days after that, I think another day or two at least, and just not being able to play it, and like, I really want to get home and play this, and that was the first time where I ever wanted to like rush home instead of stay camping, because I loved going camping, but I really wanted to put this in and play it. And I just remember sinking something like close to 100 hours into it the first time I got it, my first playthrough, and really loving it. And again, I said it's a game that I associate with many other things besides my father, but I really picked it out more because that experience wouldn't have happened until much later without him buying that, and it's sort of linking him to my experiences with that game. And those are just a bunch of games that, to me, I felt the need to play bits and pieces of, to work through the experience, something where I just put each of them in for a couple hours a piece that day and played, the first few hours of them, or played a few rounds of Tekken, and just enjoyed myself. And really, I thought it was a good way of showing how there are many, many ways in which gaming, aside from just being a pastime, has affected my life. Even just in many ways, intellectually, academically, even forming some worldviews with certain games. Like, there are, for some reason, certain experiences linked through gaming have had big effects on me, and this is just one example that I felt was very relevant and recent, and a good way of showing you a little bit of content in a way that also helps me work through an issue, and kind of telling you what's going on. And getting back to the topic of my whole like summer of Sega that's going on, there's so much more that I want to cover, and just something like this just took precedent and really interrupted that. And the new schedule, to be able to get everything out there that I either have completed or am planning to do, and really do what I wanted to do with this whole idea of a summer of Sega, I'm going to be releasing a video every weekday the last 2 weeks of August. So it's going to be 10 videos in the last 2 weeks there. A whole bunch of stuff, review of Shenmue, some Sega memorabilia, review of Shenmue 2, looking at a bunch of games for the Saturn and Dreamcast that really surprised me, some first looks at games that I'm experiencing for the first time on those systems, games that I just got, some stuff from Too Many Games and things like that, and really getting into a whole lot of stuff that I've been sort of working on throughout the summer that I really want to show you guys before this whole Sega-themed summer thing ends. And thank you very much for watching, anyone who sat through this overly long thing, and for understanding why I sort of disappeared for a little while, and why there won't be really anything after this week either. But the last 2 weeks of August, like I said, is going to be 10 Sega-related videos coming up. And thank you for letting me share this with you. This was a good way, it's almost, in a way, it's a little therapeutic being able to talk about this just sort of to the camera, to people that, will listen because of either personal experience or being able to understand the interest in having gaming attached to memories and to experiences with loved ones, and me being able to express a way in which gaming has affected me and has helped me work through a problem. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys will tune back in a couple weeks for the last burst of Summer of Sega and all kinds of great stuff, and I hope to see you then. Very excited about that, and thank you again for watching.